Hello, and welcome to PR Future, where we dive into the strategies and challenges in the PR world today with industry professionals. I'm Fred Cook, and I'm very pleased to welcome our guest and my friend, industry heavyweight Simon Halls. Simon is a USC alum, co-founder of Apex Public Relations, previously known as Slate PR, and he's one of the most important voices in the entertainment business. He tends to a Hollywood client list that includes the likes of George Clooney, Tom Ford, Nathan Lane, and many more. He's led films like American Beauty, Gladiator, and 1917 to multi-award-winning Oscar campaigns. We're lucky to have him not only as a master of the industry, but also as a longtime friend of USC and a member of the USC Center for Public Relations Board. So sit back and take some notes if you'd like, and let's get started. Hi, Simon. Thanks for joining us. How are you today?
Hi there. I'm great, thanks. I'm actually feeling much happier now with that beautiful introduction. I could have written that myself. I love it.
Simon, you and I have known each other for a very long time, way before you got into entertainment public relations. Can you give our listeners just a brief background of your career, including your start at USC?
Yeah, I was at USC, as you know, and as the waning days of my senior year were coming down, I realized that an English degree was not really preparing me for the outside world. So I went into the internship office, and just as luck would have it, one of the opportunities that were available was an internship at Warner Brothers in the public relations department. And I didn't really know a lot about public relations, but I thought it sounded interesting. I knew that we were in Los Angeles, which is sort of the hub of the entertainment community. So it kind of made sense to try sort of wading into the pool of entertainment. And I went and did that and really enjoyed it. When I was an intern, I literally did things like take my boss's shoes to the shoe shiner. And I did some really menial tasks. But having said that, I had some wonderful people who were sort of iconic within the entertainment PR world who I was working with. So I did learn sort of by osmosis how public relations worked in general and how public relations work within the framework of the entertainment world. And then, as you know, Fred, I was not an American citizen at that point. I was born in England and brought up in Canada. So after I was done with school, I had to leave the country for a while to wait for my papers to come through. And as luck would have it, I went back up to Toronto and I was offered through a confluence of events, an opportunity to do some more publicity stuff, public relations stuff for a couple of McDonald's of Canada. And McDonald's at that point was opening up the first McDonald's restaurant in Russia. As your listeners will probably know, a successful career is one part really hard work and good common sense. And it's also one part good timing and good luck and good fortune. And I had the good fortune to run into somebody who was just looking for somebody that was flexible enough and young enough to be able to sort of fly to the Soviet Union. It was the Soviet Union back then, and sort of live in a hotel room and try to put a framework of a PR program together for McDonald's. Now, I didn't really know what I was doing, but when you're in your early 20s, you got the bliss of confidence. I got lucky with mentors who sort of guided me, but I moved over to Russia and spent a year and a half sort of putting the programming together for the first McDonald's in Russia. And what that meant was putting a PR plan together for the grand opening, which got massive worldwide coverage, putting a framework together for what was called the Soviet Children's Fund. McDonald's has a history of Ronald McDonald houses and supporting kids with cancer. In the late 80s, there was the Chernobyl disaster. And a lot of kids have been affected by the fallout, the nuclear fallout. So McDonald's started the Soviet Children's Fund to try and help these kids. So proceeds from the sale of every McDonald's hamburger, French fry, anything went, a small portion of those proceeds went to helping the Soviet Children's Fund. So I had an opportunity to learn about massive worldwide event planning, but I also had an opportunity to get more granular about how to do a on-the-ground public relations program that helped the community. We launched the McDonald's over there in January of 1990 to worldwide fanfare. It was a wonderful opportunity for sort of the softening of a thawing of East-West relations. It was also, for me, an unbelievable opportunity because I was a young guy in my mid-20s facilitating interviews with Peter Jennings and Diane Sawyer and sort of everybody on the world stage in the media. That they were all fascinated by this story because it resonated in so many different ways. I got a bird's eye view at a very early age, how to work with people at that level. If you're seeing how these people work behind the scenes at an early stage, you realize there's no magic to it. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of know-how. So I was never intimidated by working with sort of the major players in the media because I'd seen, firsthand how they did it. I was in my mid-20s and I was getting a little bit restless. Sort of, there wasn't a lot to do for a 25-year-old in Moscow. You could only go to the Bolshoi Ballet so many times and the opera so many times. There was a PR firm that represented McDonald's, which was Golin Harris. The man that owned Golin Harris, ran Golin Harris, Al Golin, was a wonderful mentor to me during the McDonald's days. And he said, well, listen, you're young, you had this great opportunity. Why don't you come back to the States and see if you can broaden your experiences through an agency, because then you're getting an opportunity to work with lots of different companies. And I jumped at the opportunity. And as you know, Fred, that's what landed me with you.
Yeah.
1991. Fred was running Golin Harris, Berkmer Klein Golin Harris at that point in LA. And I came to LA and did that and spent about a year and a half there. What I found was if I was going to be in LA, I wanted to be sort of at the center of everything that was happening in culture. And in Los Angeles, it's a very entertainment industry focused city. So I thought I would love to try to work in the entertainment world as well. I got an opportunity to work at a company called Baker Winokur Ryder, which is no longer around, to an entertainment PR firm that had a corporate department. But I was thinking, well, you know what? It'd be kind of fun to learn how to market a movie. It would be really fun to see how you get involved from the ground floor on how you architect an actor's public relations campaign. So I very quickly shifted over into the entertainment world and started working on existing clients that the company had, mostly studio stuff. I was doing all the work and sort of 7 days a week, but the company that I was working for was making all the money out of it. And so I felt, well, this isn't right. If I'm going to work this hard, I want to sort of benefit for myself. So I had two other like-minded people that I worked with, Stephen Uvaim and Robin Baum, and we decided that we were going to start our own company. Now, looking back now, I can't believe that all of us had the cockiness to do that, because we were mid to late 20s and we didn't necessarily know how to run a company. But we jumped out and formed a company called Uvaim Baum Halls. And I moved to New York and became the New York partner. We were very lucky with the Uvaim Baum Halls component of the company, because what we had done is we had luckily found a lot of actors and filmmakers who weren't really well known at that point. And we were sort of taking gambles with them and they were taking gambles with us. We said, well, let's sort of try and work together on putting together PR plans for you. And it just turned out that the clients were people like Russell Crowe and Gwyneth Paltrow and Jude Law and Jennifer Aniston, all of whom were unknown at that point, and filmmakers who were sort of on the precipice of being well known, but not necessarily in the mainstream. And the Coen brothers and Ang Lee and folks, Billy Crudup, wonderful theater actor who then now is a big television and film actor. They all sort of took a chance on us. Fortunately, all of their careers sort of hit at the same time. So when their careers hit, our careers hit, because we were sort of catapulted into the sort of the forefront of prominent PR firms. So then we started saying, well, listen, we know how to do these kind of campaigns. Why don't you come and work with us as well? So very quickly, our company went from a 7 or 8 person shop to a 30-person shop. And I think in early 2000, the Interpublic Group, which is a massive worldwide communications and advertising agency, came to us and said, look, we own a company called PMK, which was the industry standard. They're the leaders of entertainment PR. And we bought this company, and all of the leadership there are much older. And we want to bring in a younger element to the company. PMK was really the firm that started entertainment PR. They did clients all the way back to Marilyn Monroe, and they managed Robert Kennedy's campaign for president in 1968. They had a massive list. They had Robert Redford and Paul Newman and all sort of the old school icons. And Woody Allen. They brought us in as equal partners with the women that ran PMK, and we became PMK HBH, HBH being the Uvaim Baum Halls. And we did that for about 15 years. and we had offices in LA, New York, and in London. But what we found was the bigger the company became, and the less interaction you had with clients, because you were managing balance sheets and profits and losses and human relations and human resources. So my partners and I felt like we wanted to get back to sort of the more nitty gritty. So I think around 2010 and 2011, we split off from PMK and went back to our original company. We called it Slate PR. Even Robin Baum and I did that, and really sort of focused on being more of a boutique agency, and have continued to do that. We are now called Apex PR for a number of logistical reasons, but it's all the same folks. It's really all the same folks that we represented 30 years ago that we're still representing now, and then some.
Simon, you've had a fascinating career, and I think we've both been doing this for way too long. But what do you think are the main changes you've seen in the business over the past 30 years? Has it been technology, the media, or what?
I think all of the above, Fred. I think that technology has led to streaming services. Technology has led to immediate access to all kinds of information, right? So when you and I were working together, we would write press releases and we'd put them out over a fax machine, or we would put them out over PR Newswire, and we would just sort of wait for responses, right? And then we could go out and have a lunch, and we'd come back and say, yeah, maybe we'll hear back today, or maybe we'll hear back tomorrow. And you could get clipping services and find out, how successful your press release was maybe a week later. Or for pitching purposes, we would, and you remember, because you were actually really wise in setting up just the media relations department within Golin Harrison. All they did all day long was pitch. But back then, you'd type up a pitch letter, and you'd send out a mailing of, say, 500 letters to different different media outlets around the country, and you just sort of wait for them to come back to you. It's you literally have to formulate a pitch. You send it out. You still have the human contact on the phone, but you send these pitches out over over email, and you're immediately getting traction, and you're finding out the level of success of what your pitch has accomplished or not. And so it's night and day. It's every part of it. And more holistically, in the entertainment world, which I can speak more specifically to, there were 4 or 5 studios, there were 3 networks, there was maybe 1 cable channel, HBO. So there wasn't this proliferation of content, right? Now there are, 400 streaming channels and studios and micro studios and macro studios. And there's so much opportunity to create content that you have to figure out ways to sort of differentiate between.
Simon, one of the things I've noticed lately is the amount of crises that are happening in the entertainment business. Is that something new, or is it just getting more attention than it used to be? Are people behaving differently than they did in the past?
Well, I think that in the history of the world, there's always been bad behavior. And I think that in referring back to my old partners, Pat Kingsley and Lois Smith, 2 real icons in the entertainment PR world and in the PR world in general. There weren't a lot of media outlets. And so what they would do is they would rely on their strong relationships with, say, somebody at the LA Times or somebody at the New York Post or somebody at CBS News. And they would say, listen, I know you know about this bad thing that's happened, but look, let's just keep it under wraps. And most of the time, because the relationships were so strong, they would be able to cover up that kind of stuff. So you'd be shocked about some of the stuff, and I can tell you off. Now, no way. You can't leave your house without, if you're in the public eye, without the threat of photographers, the threat of somebody seeing you walking down the street. So there's such a rapid response to anything anybody does. So everybody has to be on their game all the time. But back to your original question, I think that there's still a preponderance of bad behavior, but it's just so much more accessible to the general public. And people, I think, are so much more interested in what goes on in pop culture than they used to be. I mean, I grew up in Canada. I didn't read movie magazines. I didn't know what was box office. I didn't know who was dating who. I would go see movies on the weekend and be like, yeah, I like that, or I didn't like that. But now, my kids, who are not exposed to the entertainment world at all, we don't really talk about it much with them. They're telling me about Rotten Tomatoes, about, oh, that movie's great. It's got a 68% on Rotten Tomatoes. I was like, how do you know that and why do you care? But it's just, that's culture now.
I was talking recently to a publicist for a major pop star, and she said that she spends all of her time not pitching stories, but correcting them. Do you feel the same way?
Well, yes. I mean, I think in the pop world, especially a pop star, there's a lot of correcting stories, especially the higher they are in the firmament of the pop hierarchy. I'm sure that's the case. Yes, correcting stories. There's so many more members of the quote unquote press that cover this kind of stuff that you're constantly responding to things as opposed to being on your front foot.
That makes a lot of sense, Simon. And you talked about relationships with the media and how important they are. From my point of view, it seems like in mainstream PR, with emails and texts, these relationships are not as strong as they used to be. But in entertainment PR, it still seems to be very important.
Well, I can't really speak for the corporate PR relationships with the media, but what I can speak for in my world is that's everything. Yeah, that's everything, because what you have to do as public relations professional across the board, entertainment, corporate, sports, music, anything, you have to develop good and trusting relationships with the press, right? Because they're sort of the people, the conduit to the world for you. Nurturing and relationships, and I'm not talking about just taking them out to lunch or throwing a cocktail party for them. What I'm talking about is having an ongoing, regular dialogue with the folks that you want to work with on a daily basis. And the most important thing, and this is important for every aspect of public relations, integrity and honesty. What's the most important thing about, being a PR professional? It's telling the truth. Because the second you've lost your integrity with the press, you're done. Because, if you start to spin somebody, they know they're being spun. People are not idiots, and they just don't necessarily trust you. So even when times are tough, even when things are really bad for a client, you've got to be as forthcoming as you can be with the media, with the hopes that they will protect you. The off the record, luckily, even now with the preponderance of so many media outlets now, off the record is still thankfully respected. So if you go on what we call on deep background or on guidance or off the record, so far, knock wood, we're still protected. That's not spin. That's not disinformation, but it's working together to try and get information out in a productive, collaborative way.
We talked about the media. What about the relationship with clients? You said you're still working with the same clients you did 30 years ago. At Golin, we have McDonald's for 65 years and Nintendo for 30 years. What is your secret for keeping clients for such a long time in this crazy business?
Well, I think that luckily for us, and probably same in the corporate world, when you are first pitching a client to represent them, they typically meet with several people, right? And so everybody gets a vibe check, right? So you know what you're getting into business with. There are certain people in the PR world, entertainment PR world, that focus on things that are totally different than what I focus on. They focus on hype, and they focus on certain things that are a little bit more maybe superficial. And if that's what you're looking for in a PR representative in the entertainment world, then you're not looking for me. So they know from day one what they're looking for with me. And what that means is that we, people at my company and colleagues, we endeavor to be sort of part of the inner circle of somebody who's building a career. So for example, if I'm representing a director, the director has an agent, the director has a lawyer, the director sometimes has the president of his production company as well. We're all part of a team that sort of goes through every situation together. The decisions that are made by the director or the actor or the producer, they're all made in collaboration with us. There's an intrinsic trust factor that is in with us. So it's all like being part of a family. I worked with actors who were just starting out, right? 30 years ago. And now they're Oscar winners or multiple Oscar winners or Emmy winners or Tony winners. We've all gone through that journey together. And there have been times where things are really bad in their career and we're all sort of holding hands still. And then when they're hitting the heights, we're there together. They're going through marriages, they're going through divorces. It's like being part of a family. So the reason we keep them is because we're all, without sounding too kumbaya-ish, we're all very, very tight and we all trust each other.
Today, it seems like a lot of celebrities are launching other businesses outside of their entertainment career. The alcoholic beverages, tequila, beauty brands, fashion lines. Do you get involved with those enterprises when your clients do that?
Yes, yes. And there's, I'm going to even subset that even more, because what happens a lot, one of the reasons you see a lot of women, and I'm not being gender stereotypic, but what a lot of women actresses, you see them on the cover of Vogue, and you see them on the cover of Harper's Bazaar, you see them on the cover of any of the magazines, although there aren't as many magazines anymore, which we can talk about. You see them on the cover of that. That doesn't necessarily bring people into the theater anymore. And that doesn't necessarily bring, I don't know that a Vogue cover really makes a difference in box office or eyeballs on a streamer show. But what it does do is it creates an opportunity for that actress to be seen by the fashion world and where they can get campaigns, right? So we're always angling these fashion magazines for men and women. I'm doing some with a very well-known fellow right now who the ultimate goal is, yeah, we want to get awareness for the project he's promoting, but we also want to get him a campaign. So we do that going into that. And then what happens is typically, if they do get a campaign, the PR rep gets factored into the campaign. So if somebody gets a multi-million-dollar deal, right, what the agents now do is they cut the PR firm, not for multi-millions of dollars, but for a monthly fee to manage the PR function that accompanies that campaign. Like if somebody takes up a product to market, like a fashion line or a liquor line, because they trust us, they factor us into that equation as well. They trust, we have a shorthand with these clients. So we know what John Smith, who's just sold a liquor company, we know the kind of press that they're interested in doing and the kind of press they're not interested in doing, right? So, and bringing in an outside PR firm, and again, no diss on a Golin, but if John Smith had sold a liquor company, to bring in Golin to try and decide
which interviews they should do.
yeah, they just wouldn't know because they didn't have that shorthand. And it's not that they couldn't figure it out, but because it's already in place, this relationship, we do get involved with that. That's a long-winded answer to say, yes, we're very involved with any kind of consumer branding that the clients get involved with.
A few minutes ago, you were talking about magazines, and as we know, there's not nearly as many of them as there used to be. In fact, we did a survey this past year, and we asked PR people, young and old, whether they'd rather have their product endorsed by Taylor Swift online or have a story written about it in the New York Times. Younger people all said Taylor Swift. The older people all said the New York Times. How has that changed the entertainment business? Which is more important these days?
Well, again, you remember, as I said a little while ago, that there were only so many movies that came out each year, right? And there were only so many media outlets that you could use to promote that movie. So back in the day, a New York Times review would be super important to be putting on the ad, the posters and on the advertisements in the newspapers. And it would be a very effective way to get the word out that this was a quality pedigreed film. Right. And also an offshoot, you could use those reviews to help an awards campaign, which is a whole other conversation, which, awards campaigns were really the awards, Academy Awards, Tony Awards, Emmy Awards, Grammy Awards, were all put into place as marketing tools. So you could put winner of 5 Academy Awards on your poster and try to bring people in. Nowadays, don't think that reviews, because there's so much noise elsewhere, I don't think reviews are as important to bringing in eyeballs to a show or bringing people into theaters. Now, having said that, if you've got a small little movie, right, and you don't have a ton of marketing dollars, you're not at Disney and you're not at Netflix, or you're not at places that have got a bottomless pit of finances, you've got to be a little bit more, you got to take it to the streets. It's sort of guerrilla warfare. And you got to say, well, look, we've got to really work to get as much street cred from the critics so we can at least position ourselves as a credible alternative for a Marvel movie, right? So we've got to use that as an element to try and convince people that this is the project that you want to see. So it's helpful, but doesn't make or break. I've seen so many films that haven't necessarily gotten good reviews. I mean, you see it all the time. They're not necessarily getting great reviews, and then television shows, and they're still number one globally. They're still number one for weeks. It sort of used to make us all scratch our head and say, but wait, the critics hated that. And now what we're learning is people don't really care that much as much anymore.
You said your kids look at Rotten Tomatoes when they're deciding what movie to go to. Do you think they're looking at the critic score or the consumer score?
It's interesting you said that. I think that they look at both. And so if something gets 98% on the critic score and 95% on the audience score, you got to know that that's the project is sitting in a good spot. But I think kids and consumers in general are sophisticated enough to know if you've got certified fresh 85% critics, but you're at 68% an audience, people are like, I don't know. I mean, this may be sort of an artsy-fartsy movie that I don't know if I want to see. So the audience scores are critically important. You know very well, truly, how your film's going to do or how your TV show is going to do by seeing what's called CinemaScore, which is what they do when you come out of a theater on opening weekend. They interview people to see, what'd you think of that movie? And you got an A, B, or C. And if you're in the A+ cinema scores, or if you're back to Rotten Tomatoes, if you're in the 95% or even 90% of audience score, you're going to do, anecdotally, we see that you're going to do okay. If you're at a C at CinemaScore and you're in the 60s at Rotten Tomato audience score, as much as you sort of want to pray and throw lots of money into a campaign, you're kind of screwed, because it's a pretty accurate reflection on how you're going to do.
Can PR really impact the score on Rotten Tomatoes? Is there some way to influence that from a public relations perspective?
I think on the critical side, it's all about how you structure a film.
Yeah.
So what you try to do, and you and I have talked about this before, is about building champions. So if you've got a film that you know is good, what you typically do is once, the PR team and the studio see the film very early, and you sort of think, okay, we got something here. We got something that we think that can resonate with audiences. How are we going to get the word out, right? Let's take marketing off the table. Let's take ad dollars off the table. How are we going to start a buzz about this film, knowing that you've got 400 other films that you've got to compete with, right? So what you do is you build champions, and you figure out who are the kind of people we know, going back again to relationships with the media. You know your core media very well. So what you say is, okay, this film, I think, is going to resonate with, I'm making this up, but the entertainment editor at Time Magazine. We know, I think that this is something that the culture editor at the New York Times, I know that this is something that somebody on some online site, I think that these people will see it. What we're going to do is we're going to roll the dice, and we're going to bring them in, and we're going to say, all reactions are embargoed. You can't say anything to the world, but we want to get your opinion. And if you like it, we'd like to see if you could help us champion it. You bring them in, it's a gamble. And if they do like it, then you say, okay, well, how can we work together to communicate to the world that this is a special movie? This is a great movie. And then you start, when you're saying, can we affect critics? You can't necessarily affect critics, but what you do know that if you're with a culture editor of the New York Times, if they're really liking this film, you're going to get some stories within the New York Times Arts and Leisure section. So that's an implied endorsement right away, right? That's a third-party endorsement. And then what we typically see is it usually correlates. If the New York Times Arts and Leisure culture editor is liking something and feels like that they want to get their weight behind it and give like 3 stories about the making of, the star of, and different stories. There are companies out there. There's one called Screen Engine, and there's Nielsen. What they do is they hire folks that have been critics in the past that aren't necessarily critics right now, and they bring these ex-critics or people who aren't necessarily actively being a critic right now. They bring them in, and they show them the movie. So these people will then give their honest opinion about the film. So you're getting reviews from reviewers who aren't going to publish it anywhere because they don't have an outlet to publish it. And you can get a pretty good idea about how the critical consensus is going to be very early on. So there are ways to play around with that. But again, going back to the sort of the same thing as any kind of PR, your product has to be good, right? If you're at McDonald's, your McFlurry has to be good, or you can do any kind of campaign you want, but if it's not good, nobody's going to buy it.
I was recently interviewed by the New York Times about Mel Gibson being on the Joe Rogan podcast to promote a new movie that he had directed. And it struck me at the time that was an unusual place for movie promotion. But are you looking for new outlets like that all the time? Places to talk about your clients that you didn't explore before?
Oh, absolutely. And remember, what PR is, we're hired, again, across the board, we're hired to sort of trumpet our projects or trumpet our brands or to get the word out. So consumers can have an idea of what something is, and we can help to influence their decision to come and watch our projects or to buy products from on a consumer standpoint. Because there's such a preponderance of so many media outlets now, you have so many opportunities, right? So Joe Rogan, and I don't know, you can tell me, I don't know how many, but I think it's tens or hundreds of millions of followers, right? So if you can get your client on Joe Rogan to talk about a project, that's a home run. And no, the challenge is you also have to keep your own internal integrity, right? If you don't agree with what Joe Rogan is saying politically, it's going to be very tough for you to go on that show and promote your project. So you have to make a sort of a gut decision about what feels right for you or for your client. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm not embarrassed or shy to say any opportunity I can get to get the word out in a meaningful way, I'll look at.
Are you doing a lot more podcasts than you used to?
So much. It's funny you said that. This spring, I was watching what movies were working and what movies weren't working. And I was watching what PR campaigns, I should share this with you, Fred, and you can share it with your students. I was watching what campaigns worked and what didn't. And what I was finding was the Wicked campaign, the Superman campaign, the campaign for there were a couple of others, and it'll come to me. And I'll send you all the information. And I did a little bit of a dive into saying, what did these people do to promote their movies that made it different than a typical campaign? And what I saw across the board were podcasts, internship program. And so I got a bunch of our intern team in our New York office to do a deep dive. So I got these guys to do a deep dive. And it's a fascinating study about how deep these actors and these studios went on podcasts. People are doing way more podcasts now than they are doing traditional media. And now what we're doing is I'm launching, as you know, I work with Ryan Murphy. And so he's got a ton of different shows coming out all the time. He's got 5 coming out this year. And what we decided to do is rather than focus our energies on traditional media, a trade cover or a New York Times, those are great. What we did was we used the information that we'd gotten from this research study, and we said, okay, everybody who's doing these shows, and they're high profile people, Kim Kardashian, Glenn Close, Naomi Watts, Sarah Paulson, Evan Peters, like all kinds of people. We're going to really encourage them. We can't make anybody do anything, but encourage them to go down the road and look at the podcasting. And to a person, every one of these folks are saying, yeah, I'll do that. Because a lot of these podcasts are really friendly environments. Podcasts, I really believe podcasts are a massive, massive component for promotional. Now, it's easy for me because I've got people in the public eye. I don't know that translates so well to brands, because I don't know if you're going to get Amy Poehler or Joe Rogan sitting down with the creator of a new video game from Nintendo, because there's no way to get clickbait out of that, right? It's not that interesting a thing for these folks, but for us, it's catnip.
Simon, let's talk about USC for a second. You went to USC. A lot of students that come to USC come there because they want to work in the entertainment or the sports world. Are there a lot of opportunities for college graduates these days in entertainment? Is everybody hiring, or are things kind of quiet?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, I think that, look, I can only speak for me and some of my colleagues at other PR firms. And, I talk to a lot of folks across the board in my field. And yeah, we're hiring. We hire a lot of interns out of USC. We hire a lot of interns interestingly enough, we've got a ton of interns and actually entry-level folks that we're hiring from Chapman. college, Chapman University, but mostly USC. I'm loyal. We give first dibs to USC folks. Yeah, there are opportunities there. What typically happens, and I'm really proud of this for our company, what typically happens is we start somebody as an intern.
What qualities do you look for in interns when you hire them, and what talents do they need to succeed overall in the entertainment business?
I always like to get on, typically now it's Zoom rather than in person, but I like to get on on a Zoom before we bring somebody into the company, just to get a sense of who the person is. And you can tell, and Fred, I'm sure you are in the same boat. You can tell right away who's going to work and who's not going to work. The person that's sort of eager and asking questions and enthusiastic and has actually put some thought into the conversation. And it's so funny. Sometimes people are apologetic. They say, I'm sorry I'm asking so many questions. I'm like, don't be sorry. That's the best thing you could do is ask me questions. But what I look for is enthusiasm. You don't have to know anything about the day-to-day process of PR because it's, that's learned. But you do have to have an enthusiasm and you can sense an intelligence and a curiosity 5 minutes into a conversation. And so if I see curiosity and enthusiasm and a willingness to work and sort of that spark of somebody that really wants to do it, you hire them. And I'm sure, Fred, you've been doing this for a long time too. You've hired so many people across the world. You know when somebody is eager and curious, right? And then you take a chance on them.
You're right. You do know oftentimes in the first few minutes whether somebody's right for a job. But I've made a few mistakes along the way, but my batting average overall is not too bad.
Same, of course.
Simon, you've been doing this for a long time. Let me ask you to look into the future for a second. What do you think is going to be big? Is AI going to be big in entertainment PR? Polarization? Hybrid? Changing media landscape? What do you see for the future of entertainment PR when you look out over the horizon?
Well, I think there's been such rapid change over the last, let's say, 5-6 years, that I wonder if this breakneck pace of change could keep going. I don't know. I mean, it's just, I don't, it's spinning forwards. I suspect there'll be a little bit of a stasis for a while where people are going to be able to catch up. But what I'm fascinated by, and this is not necessarily all that much of the PR function yet, but what I'm fascinated about is this whole AI thing and all the moral questions that are associated with AI, where people can co-opt people's personalities or voices or looks to their own advantage. What I'm just with the head of one of the big studios in town, somebody you and I know in common, and they were really waxing rhapsodic about what's happening with AI, what people are getting set up to do now, and it's happening already. It's just they haven't launched it yet. What people can do now is that they're going to go to consumers and say, you tell us what story you want. So let's just make this up. Star Wars, right? Okay, we've got Star Wars, any of the Star Wars movies. We're going to give you an opportunity to write your own story here. So you'll have the characters, you'll have, C-3PO and Princess Leia and all these people, but you get to tell us how you want the story to end and what you want to happen to Harrison Ford's character. And they can create their own reality, their own Star Wars movie. That to me is crazy. I'm just not smart enough technologically. I don't know how that would even work, but it does bring moral questions in, right? So if somebody has given a performance 20 years ago and it's sort of set in stone and locked as that performance, and then somebody can come in technologically and change that performance and get that person to do something different. I don't know. I don't know how that sits well with that person, that actor. And does that actor get paid again, for the different outcome of what their character's journey was? I don't know. So I think that's something that everybody's grappling with, and so much more is happening than we know about. And you hear about it, and your head spins, and you think, oh my gosh, this is really happening. So all of us as PR professionals have just got to be on our front foot and figure out how we manage it. Now, having said that, we've done it with the demise of most of the traditional media. We figured out how to pivot into the social media world, and we figured out how to pivot into podcasts. So constantly in business, you have to learn to adapt. But I do think that there's going to be consistent need to adapt as we go forward in not just entertainment. I think across the board in corporate life.
Simon, I don't think we can end this interview without talking a little bit about what's happening in Hollywood these days. Polarization seems to have a grasp on the entertainment business like never before. And I'm concerned not only what it means for late night television, but what it means for the industry overall. What is your view on this situation?
Well, I think it's a much bigger issue than just the entertainment industry, frankly. I think that the country, we could even say the world is going through major shifts, major changes, and major eruptions in terms of different factions on either side of the political spectrum wanting to have their voices heard, right? So you're seeing it in Europe, you're seeing it in Asia, and you're definitely seeing it in our country. So it's, you can't open a newspaper or turn on any kind of a news site without seeing how polarized our country is becoming. And so that's, I think, the bigger concern, our country as a whole. But speaking more specifically to the entertainment industry, I think that the entertainment industry is having to deal with how do they deal with all of the stuff that's coming out of this new administration. How do they deal with it in terms of maintaining freedom of speech and First Amendment rights versus some of the really draconian measures that the administration is trying to force onto the major corporations, right? So Disney and Amazon and Facebook, all of these companies are major international corporations. And so they are subject to all kinds of punitive measures from the administration if they don't sort of toe the line. So it's a really, really tricky surgical route that these folks have to take. And I don't envy them. I think from my perspective, I think they're doing the best they can. I'm very, on a personal level, I'm very impressed by how Bob Iger, chairman of Disney, has sort of navigated these waters. I think I can speak from the folks from my industry. I think everybody sort of stood up and applauded when he spoke up and said that we're going to still value and champion freedom of speech and let Jimmy Kimmel come back. And I don't think that you've seen that Jimmy Kimmel has been neutered in any way. I think he's still talking about the stuff he believes in. And so I think that this is a challenge that we've never had to deal with before, at least in our lifetime. I wasn't around during the time of the McCarthy era, but it feels very similar to this situation where the government is trying, or elements of the government are trying to decide what's allowed to be said and what's not allowed to be said over the airwaves.
It's really great talking to you. Thanks for being part of our podcast, and best of luck with everything.
All right. Thanks. Thank you.
Before we close off, I'd like to thank Simon for taking time today to speak with us. Once again, I highly recommend checking out Simon's company, Apex Public Relations, the entertainment industry's leading PR agency. And if you enjoyed today's episode, give it a like and consider giving us a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. That way you can keep track of everything related to public relations. A big thank you to the USC Annenberg Center for Public Relations podcast production team for making this show possible. I'm Fred Cook. This has been PR Future, and we hope to see you next time. Fight on.